What is an ambassador? Can anyone give me a definition of what an ambassador is? Does anybody not know what ambassador means? Who doesn't know what ambassador means? Okay, now I was in a situation when I was sort of your age trying to explain what an ambassador is, and this is how I explained it. Has anyone seen Star Wars: The Phantom Menace?
Yeah.
Who hasn't seen Star Wars: The Phantom Menace? Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm just talking to some Star Wars. I mean, you're legally an adult. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so in the first Star Wars film, in the fourth Star Wars film, Episode 1. Shush. Right? Are you okay? Okay. Right. So what happens is that there is a problem on the planet, and the Republic, who's a big governmental body, send 2 Jedi. They're the guys with the light sticks to go and sort it out. They were representing the Republic. Okay. So an ambassador is an official. Did you want to say something? Oh, sorry. You were. I thought you put your hand up. An ambassador is somebody who represents someone else, so like a bigger party. Okay, so that was another thing. Who's seen the Lord of the Rings? Okay, who's seen the extended version of Return of the King? Who thought that the Mouth of Sauron was like the creepiest character ever? Right. So the Mouth of Sauron is a character who's in the book quite. I mean, he's quite a powerful character in the book, but he's also only in the extended version of Return of the King, and it's really weird because in the theatrical cut, Aragorn goes to the gate and then comes back again. But in the in the extended cut, he goes to the gate, talks to this really creepy guy who's got like this weird kind of eye covering on and like really long, disgusting teeth. Who says he uses like Old English and says, "My master Sauron bids thee welcome, King Aragorn," and all that kind of rubbish. And the Mouth of Sauron is a character. It's not. Are you okay?
All right.
Okay. He represents Sauron, but from a very different point of view, where you think the Jedi are good, Sauron not so good. In 2 Corinthians 5:20, we are called ambassadors of Christ. Paul refers to Christians as ambassadors of Christ. So if we are ambassadors, we represent Christ. Where do we represent him? Tobes? Everywhere. When do we not represent him? Well, even then, sleeping for Jesus. Who would like to do that? Who'd like to sleep for Jesus? That'd be quite nice, wouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah. You don't care about Jesus. It's just sleeping.
Oh, I care about you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with you. Okay. Right. So as ambassadors, it's very, very important that we realise that we actually have a role. We can't opt out of that. We stand in the gap. Who's ever heard that phrase in reference to Christian stuff? Has anyone heard that before? Standing in the gap? I'll explain it. So standing in the gap is a little bit like being between God and the world. Okay, because we are all in situations where we are faced with people who are not Christians. So we are actually representing Jesus to them, which is quite a responsibility, actually, isn't it? So when we're like with our families, when we're with our friends at school, when we're in hobbies, clubs, and all manner of situations, we are always representing Jesus, right? Let's take a little sharp turn somewhere else. Who knows who Queen Esther is? Who is she? Well done. You get nothing. Okay. She was married to...
King.
His name was?
King.
Who said that? Well done. Yes, King Xerxes. 2 X's, okay? And he ruled, I double-checked this, he ruled from India to Kush. Oh, where's Kush? I don't know. Right? She was Jewish, but there was a plot. Some of you know, who knows the story of Esther? Mordecai. That's a great name, isn't it? Right? Who knows the story of Esther and what happened? Yeah, okay. Very quickly. So she was Jewish and she was chosen to be the next queen because the last queen was rude. Yeah, and that happened. Yeah. It's a bit weird when you read the story because like the kings like came in and go, I'll have that one. That's not how relationships should really work, but this is how it was in the time, right? Right. She was Jewish and there was a plot for the Jews to be killed and it was manipulated by royal decree, so the king couldn't get out of it. Mordecai was Mordecai was her uncle who attended the palace, and he says to her this from Esther 4:14: if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, which is quite interesting because he had a big belief in God. But you and your you and your father's family will perish, and who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. It's a really important scripture. Loads of people speak on it. Everyone zones in on that scripture. And so I'm going to do exactly the same kind of thing. Is that there is nobody on the earth who is like you at this present moment. And there's no one who was and who will be. So you are all very, very unique in the positions that you are in. Right? So sometimes it might look a little bit like, say, all four of you guys are in cadets, aren't you? Yeah. So when you're there, you're all wearing the same uniform and you all look pretty much the same, don't you? However, you're all going to be unique in the way that you respond to authority. I mean, it should look uniform because that's that's how cadets work, isn't it? That's how we are. Who's ever done like Cubs or Beavers or anything like that? Or yeah, school uniform's another one. Yeah, you all kind of look the same, but actually, you really, yeah, no, but you're not the same. But you are all put, and you're all in unique positions. Okay, some of you are with other Christians, and some of you are not. Who's ever in a situation where you're with no other Christians? Yeah, it's hard, right? I literally did it all the way through school. Nobody else was a Christian from year 7 to 6th form. Nobody else. When I left, other people went, "Oh yeah, I was a Christian." I was like, "What are you doing?" Everybody, because I've always been stubborn and stuff. If you ask my mum, if you ever speak to her, and you ask her what was Tom like as a Christian in school, she'll tell you that I was a little bit bold. Is not quite. I wasn't kind of like standing on the corner of the playground going, "Turn ye to Christ." I wasn't doing any of that. But it was quite obvious that I was a Christian at school, right? This for such a time as this, as Esther was saying, it applies to all of you. You're all in your positions for such a time as this. Bless you, my brother. So we are ambassadors to stand in the gap for such a time as this. Your schools, your families, your hobbies, and your friendship groups. You are not accidentally anywhere. You're not. It's not an accident, okay? I want to read you a whole piece of scripture, okay, from Genesis. But I'm going to read from the Message. Has anyone experienced the Message before? Who does not know what the Message is? You're right. You can say I don't know what the Message is. That's fine. The Message is it's an interpretation of the Bible done into more kind of contemporary language. Although that was written about 20 years ago, but it kind of helps us to understand that it comes across narratively a little better sometimes. So I'll read you this from Genesis 18. It says, "Then God says, 'Shall I keep back from Abraham what I'm about to do? Abraham is going to become a large and strong nation. All the nations of the world are going to find themselves blessed through him. Yes, I've settled on him as the one to train his children and future family to observe God's ways of life, live kindly and generously and fairly, so that God can complete in Abraham what he promised him.'" God continued, "The cries of the victims in Sodom and Gomorrah are deafening. The sin of those cities is immense. I'm going down there to see for myself. See what they're doing is as bad as it sounds. Then I'll know." The men set out for Sodom, but Abraham stood in God's path, blocking him. Abraham confronted him. "Are you serious? Are you planning on getting rid of the good people right along with the bad? What if there are 50 decent people left in the city? Will you lump the good with the bad and get rid of the lot? Wouldn't you spare the city for the sake of those 50 innocents? I can't believe you do that. Kill off the good and the bad alike as if there was no difference between them. Doesn't the judge of all the earth judge with justice?" God said, "If I find 50 decent people in the city of Sodom, I'll spare the place just for them." Abraham came back. "Do I, a mere mortal made from a handful of dirt, dare open my mouth again to my master? What if the 50 fall short by 5? Would you destroy the city because of those missing 5? He said, "I won't destroy if there are 45. And it carries on. Abraham spoke up again. "What if you only find 40? Neither will I destroy it for 40. He said, "Master, don't be irritated with me, but what if 30 are found?" "No, I won't do it if I find 30. He pushed on. "I know I'm trying your patience, Master, but what about for 20? "I won't destroy it for 20. He wouldn't quit. "Don't get angry, Master. This is the last time. What if you only come up with 10? For the sake of 10, I won't destroy the city." When God finished talking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham went home. Now, why am I bringing this up? Is because Abraham wasn't changing God's mind there, by the way. That's what it might look like. But what Abraham was doing is that he was trying to protect his nephew. That's what he was actually aiming to do. And what he was doing is that he was getting in between the world and God. He was standing in the gap. He was kind of being that bridge to try and get the bad to good, as it were. Okay. Abraham stood between God's righteousness, between God's righteous wrath and the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, because was ruling with justice. God rules with justice. But this is our ambassadorial position as well, not to kind of go, God, don't send people to hell. God, don't do this. It's not about that. It's the opposite. It's to introduce people to a way out of the sin and all that kind of stuff. Because our ambassadorial position is to be in the field for Jesus. Because actually Jesus is that example in the first place. Where Abraham typifies what Jesus did for us. What I mean by that is that he became an example or a pre-example of Jesus. What he did was what Jesus eventually did for eternity for us. So Jesus, whereas we are going to talk to our friends and be Christ to our friends, Christ was Christ for us. Yeah? Do you see where I'm going with that? Jesus stood in the gap and went, it's like this. I've written it down here. Imagine a court case and then Jesus represented us. But instead of defending us, he says that we're guilty, but he'll take the punishment. That's the whole gospel, right? That's it. Jesus taking our sin on the cross and being that example of standing in the gap there. Now, we can't be taking our friend's sin. We can't do that because we're not perfect, because we've got our own sin that we need to kind of deal with first. How do we deal with that? We let Jesus deal with it. But what we need to do is we need to be that ambassadorial link to Jesus. So if you are just doing Christianity and being Christ-like when you're with other Christians, that's not going to cut it. We need to be living for Jesus and introducing people to Jesus outside of these situations. And that is a challenge, because actually, what if you're the only Christian that somebody meets? Because has anyone ever heard the excuse, or I don't want to trust Christians because I got hurt by Christians, right? Unfortunately, people don't look at Jesus and go, he's better. What they'll do, they'll look at us. Like Gandhi very famously said, Jesus is all right, but his followers are a bit rubbish. That's paraphrase. But Gandhi kind of said, I'd be a Christian if it wasn't for Christians. I mean, that's a very simplistic view, and I'm not saying that weight is upon us, because that's not fair. What I am saying, right, is that be mindful that when we are outside of the Christian bubble, that you might be the only person that links somebody to Jesus in their life.